Emily sat in the small Portland cafe, wishing she could rewind her life to a time when everything felt simple. Rain slid down the window like it had someplace more certain to be, and she stared through it as if she could find answers hiding in the gray sky. 12 years of marriage had taught her how to bend, adjust, be patient. But recently, she felt like she was bending so far she might break. Daniel was still kind, still responsible, still the man who once left little notes in her lunch bag just to make her smile, but something in him had faded. It wasn't anger or coldness, just distance, a quiet drift she couldn't stop no matter how hard she tried. He came home later, talked less, and when he looked at her, she saw a softness that felt practiced, as if he were choosing safety instead of honesty. That was what scared her most. She didn't want her marriage to become polite instead of loving. She had called her best friend, Lily, without deciding what she wanted to say. They had known each other since college, the kind of friendship built from late-night talks and long road trips across the Washington border just to watch the sunrise. Lily was the steady one, practical yet warm, the person who brought soup during flu season and laughter during heartbreak. Emily trusted her more than anyone, which was why she felt nervous even before the conversation began. When Lily arrived and slid into the booth, her coat dripping from the rain, she took one look at Emily's face and frowned with concern. Emily tried to smile, but failed, and Lily gently nudged her hand. "Tell me what's going on," she said, her voice soft but firm, the way it always was when she knew Emily was holding something back. Emily started with small pieces, talking about Daniel's long hours and how they barely shared dinners anymore. She mentioned how their conversations had become surface level, full of schedules and grocery lists instead of dreams and little jokes. She spoke quickly, as if rushing through details would stop the pain from catching up. But the moment she looked up and saw Lily watching her so closely, the heavier truth slipped out. "I think I'm losing him," she whispered, and the words hit the table with more weight than she expected. Lily didn't rush to respond. She stayed quiet, letting Emily breathe. That was one of the reasons Emily trusted her Lily never filled silence with empty comfort. Finally, Lily asked what she needed, and Emily surprised herself with her answer. She didn't want advice or sympathy. She wanted help. She wanted someone who could see what she couldn't. Someone who could reach Daniel in a way she no longer seemed able to. She felt foolish even suggesting it, but the words came anyway. "Can you talk to him? Not to take sides, just to help me understand what I'm missing." Lily looked startled, not because she didn't care, but because she understood how delicate the situation was. Emily felt her throat tighten as she waited for her response. Lily hesitated, thinking it through carefully, then nodded with a quiet seriousness. "If that's what you want, I'll try," she said, though her tone carried a cautious weight, as if she sensed the risks even if Emily didn't dot as they talked. The cafe around them filled with the soft clatter of cups and low conversations. But Emily felt like she and Lily were sitting inside a bubble of worry and hope. She explained how every time she tried to reach Daniel, he pulled back gently, saying he was tired or stressed or just processing. Emily didn't want to be dramatic, didn't want to assume the worst, but she couldn't ignore the uneasiness growing inside her. Something had shifted, and she didn't know how to get it back. Lily listened without judgment, asking questions only when needed, helping Emily sort her thoughts faster than she could on her own. But when the conversation faded and their cups sat empty, a strange tension lingered in the air. Emily felt it before she understood it. She had asked her friend to step into the middle of her marriage, even though some part of her knew that inviting another person, even a trusted one, carried emotional risks. Yet she was desperate, too afraid of what silence might cost. Lily sensed the uncertainty, but she still offered a supportive smile, promising to be careful, promising to help however she could. When they stood to leave, Emily felt a flicker of relief mixed with something she couldn't name. She believed she had taken the first step toward saving her marriage. But as Lily hugged her goodbye, Emily caught a tiny, thoughtful look in her friend's eyes, one that hinted this path might not be as simple as she hoped. And as the rain continued falling around them, she walked back to her car with a heart full of hope, fear, and a feeling she couldn't shake. Something had begun in that cafe. And it was going to change everything. Asterisk Daniel didn't notice when things began to shift. But Emily saw at the moment Lily stepped through their front door a few days after the cafe conversation. Emily had expected awkwardness or tension, yet Lily moved with calm confidence, greeting Daniel like she had always belonged in their living room. Daniel looked surprised but not uncomfortable, and that small, natural ease startled Emily more than she wanted to admit. She had asked for help, and now it was happening faster and more directly than she imagined. The first conversation was simple. Lily asked how work was going, and Daniel opened up about long hours and the pressure he felt to prove himself. Emily listened from the hallway, pretending to sort laundry while really clinging to every word. Hearing him share feelings he rarely admitted to her created an ache she wasn't prepared for. She wanted to step in, to sit beside him and show him she understood. But she stayed where she was, telling herself this was part of the plan. She had asked Lily to help, and Lily was doing exactly that over the next week. Lily visited more often, always with good intentions. She brought coffee during Daniel's short breaks. She stayed after dinner to talk through the stresses he carried. Daniel seemed lighter around her, not because he cared less about Emily, but because talking to someone outside the marriage made him feel less responsible for hurting anyone's feelings. He wasn't shutting Emily out. He was simply opening a window he never realized had been closed. Emily tried to be grateful, yet every time she watched them talk, a strange tug pulled inside her chest. She trusted Lily, but seeing her husband laugh with her best friend felt different now. There was no wrongdoing, nothing inappropriate, just a soft closeness forming, something gentle but real. And Emily felt torn, wanting the help, yet fearing what that help might lead to. One evening after dinner, Daniel and Lily sat on the couch discussing a team conflict he had at work. Emily stood at the sink washing dishes, listening to their voices blend with the hum of the dishwasher. She wasn't jealous, at least not in the usual sense. What unsettled her was how natural they sounded together. It's like two people carrying a conversation that had been waiting for the right moment to appear. Lily encouraged him to talk about emotions he usually buried. She asked questions that made him think instead of shutting down. And Daniel responded to her with an openness Emily hadn't seen in months. When he finally said, "I feel like I don't know how to reach Emily lately." Emily froze, her hands still in the warm dishwater. Her stomach tightened as Lily answered in a soft, careful voice. "She cares about you more than you realize," Lily said. "She's scared you're slipping away." Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. A gesture Emily recognized as him, holding back frustration mixed with worry. "I'm not trying to slip away," he murmured. "I'm just overwhelmed." Emily felt both relieved and heartbroken, grateful to hear the truth, yet pained that she wasn't the one hearing it directly. She leaned against the counter, closing her eyes, trying to steady her breath. She wanted to walk into the room, sit down, and tell Daniel she still believed in them. Instead, she stayed still, afraid that any interruption might push him back into silence later that night. Lily quietly pulled Emily aside before leaving. She told her that Daniel wasn't avoiding the marriage, but struggling to face things he didn't know how to articulate. Emily nodded, appreciating the information, but she couldn't ignore the small hesitation in Lily's eyes. Something unspoken lingered between them, as if Lily herself was wrestling with a feeling she didn't want to acknowledge. Emily tried to shake the thought away, telling herself she was overthinking, but the tension remained. Subtle but present, days passed quickly. And Emily noticed Daniel looking forward to Lily's visits, not in an inappropriate way, but with a sense of relief, like someone finally understood him. That realization brought a sting of guilt to Emily. She had pushed for this, hoping Lily could help build a bridge back to Daniel. But now she felt like she was standing on the outside of something she had created. She wasn't angry at Lily or suspicious of Daniel. She was simply afraid that in asking for help, she had unknowingly changed the dynamics between all three of them. When Lily dropped by after work one afternoon, Emily noticed a different look in her friend's eyes, concern, mixed with a heaviness that hadn't been there before. It became clear when she spoke with Daniel alone that she was starting to feel the weight of the role Emily had put her in. Emily watched from the doorway, realizing things were shifting faster than she could control. She wanted her marriage back. She wanted her husband to reconnect with her. But as she watched Daniel and Lily talk with such raw honesty, she couldn't shake the fear that fixing things might become more complicated than she ever imagined. Emily never thought the tension in her house could grow so quickly, yet one evening made her realize it had. She came home early from work expecting the usual quiet. Maybe the faint sound of the TV in the background. But instead, she heard voices from the living room that felt too close, too intimate. She paused at the hallway, trying to steady her breathing, and saw Daniel and Lily sitting across from each other at the small coffee table. Leaning slightly forward as if the space between them had vanished. Their conversation was soft, careful, but charged with a weight Emily hadn't anticipated. Daniel's hands rested on the table, fingers twitching as he spoke about his frustrations at work and the confusion he felt about their marriage. And Lily listened with complete attention, nodding, her expression open and encouraging. Emily wanted to intervene, to step into the room and remind them that she was still part of this equation. Yet she hesitated, realizing that doing so might break the fragile honesty flowing between them. She stood in the shadows, feeling both grateful and afraid that the closeness she had asked for was already growing faster than she could. Control dot when Daniel finally admitted, "I feel lost sometimes, like I don't know how to fix things with Emily." Emily felt a sharp twist in her chest. She knew this was the conversation she had wanted, the honesty she had longed for. But hearing it directed to someone else made it sting. Lily's response was gentle and measured, reminding Daniel of Emily's love and her willingness to fight for their relationship. And yet Emily noticed a softness in Lily's tone that carried a weight beyond mere advice. There was care there, subtle and unspoken, and Emily couldn't deny it. The realization hit her that in asking her friend to step in, she had introduced an emotional closeness that wasn't supposed to exist. A connection forming in the very space meant to be shared with her alone. Emily's mind raced as she tried to sort her feelings: pride, relief, jealousy. Virals swirling together as she remained hidden in the hallway, watching the way her husband leaned in slightly when Lily spoke. How his voice softened in a way it rarely did with her, like later that night. After Lily had left, Emily found herself sitting on the couch, staring at the empty space where they had been talking, trying to make sense of what she had witnessed. She recognized the importance of what had happened. Daniel had opened up. Shared feelings he had bottled up for months, and for that, she was thankful. Yet the gratitude was tangled with an uneasy awareness that boundaries had shifted. That the simple help she had requested had grown into something more complicated. When she called Lily to thank her, the voice on the other end carried an unexpected hesitancy. "Emily, Daniel is starting to open up," Lily said, "but you both need to talk directly, without me in the middle." The pause that followed was heavy, and Emily sensed an underlying truth Lily wasn't saying aloud. Something about feelings that were developing despite the intentions. Emily's stomach churned as she asked gently, "Lily, did something happen?" and heard only a strained, careful reply. "Nothing you should worry about. I just care about you both. Maybe too much." The confession, vague but loaded, left Emily with a sense of unease she couldn't shake. She understood that by asking for help, she had placed both her friend and her husband in an emotionally charged space, one that required careful navigation and honesty from everyone involved. The following days were tense but quiet. With subtle shifts in the household, Daniel became more communicative, more willing to share his thoughts and feelings. Yet Emily noticed him looking toward Lily's visits with an anticipation that unsettled her. It wasn't flirtation or desire, was relief. Comfort in a friend who helped him articulate emotions he had kept hidden. But the effect on Emily was complex. She realized that while her marriage was slowly healing, new layers of emotional vulnerability had been added, and she couldn't ignore them. Each time Lily came over, Emily watched from the periphery, noting how carefully her friend navigated the conversations, how Daniel responded with openness that had been absent for months. Emily recognized that they were building trust. But she also felt a quiet tension growing, a line she hadn't expected to cross. She understood now that helping had consequences. And while she was thankful for Lily's support, she also felt the responsibility of managing the delicate balance between friendship and marriage. The realization weighed heavily on her. And as she sat alone at night reflecting on the day's events, she understood that the most important step would come next, confronting Daniel directly, facing the truths that had surfaced, and finding a way to navigate the fragile new dynamic without losing sight of what mattered most. The challenge was clear, and Emily knew that the journey to rebuild trust and closeness would require courage, honesty, and the willingness to face uncomfortable emotions head-on, for herself, for Daniel, and for the friend who had entered their lives with the best intentions, but had unwittingly shifted the path of their marriage. Saturday morning came with a quiet stillness that made Emily's heart race. She had spent the week replaying every conversation, every look, every subtle shift in the house. And she knew it was time to face Daniel directly. The air felt heavy, charged with anticipation as she found him sitting on the couch, a mug of coffee in his hands, staring out the window at the gray sky. He didn't look up when she entered, but Emily could see the tension in his shoulders, the hesitation in the way he held the cup. She took a deep breath and sat across from him, trying to steady the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "We need to talk," she said softly, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her chest. Daniel finally turned, meeting her eyes with a mixture of relief and worry, as if he had been waiting for permission to speak. "I know," he said quietly. "I've been thinking about everything, about us, about everything that's happened." Emily nodded, her pulse quickening. This was the moment she had feared and hoped for, the raw honesty she needed, the chance to rebuild what had slipped away. Daniel's voice grew firmer as he spoke, sharing feelings he had buried for months. He admitted how distant he had felt, not because of a lack of love, but because of fear, stress, and the overwhelming sense of failing Emily without even realizing it. Emily listened intently, holding back tears, feeling both the ache of the past and the spark of hope for the future. She realized that Lily's help had been a catalyst, not a replacement, and that Daniel's willingness to open up now was the key to their healing. When he confessed, "I'm scared I'm not the man you fell in love with," Emily reached for his hand instinctively, feeling the warmth, the hesitation, and the vulnerability all at once. "We'll find our way back," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Together." The words felt like a promise, fragile yet powerful. And Daniel's eyes softened as he squeezed her hand, the tension in his body easing just slightly. After their talk, the house felt different, lighter somehow. Yet Emily knew the work was just beginning. She watched Daniel move through the day with a quiet determination, sharing small moments of attention, checking in and smiling in ways that reminded her of the man she had married. There was no dramatic change overnight, no instant miracle, but the shift in energy was undeniable. For the first time in weeks, Emily felt a sense of partnership, a shared effort to heal and rebuild. She reflected on the week's events, on Lily's involvement, and felt a complex mixture of gratitude and caution. Lily had been instrumental in helping Daniel express himself, but Emily also recognized the emotional tightrope they had walked together, and the need to reaffirm boundaries and trust moving forward. Later that afternoon, Emily watched from the porch as Lily gathered her things to leave. There was a soft, quiet moment before she walked to the car, and Emily felt the bittersweet weight of what had transpired. Lily looked back at them, a subtle, knowing expression on her face, and Emily called out, "Are you sure everything's okay?" Lily smiled gently, a little sadly, and nodded. "Sometimes helping hurts, but you're both strong. I'm glad you're talking." Emily waved as Lily drove away, feeling the mixture of relief and lingering tension settle in her chest. She turned to Daniel, who had followed her onto the porch, his hand finding hers effortlessly. "Ready to try again?" he asked, his voice light but sincere. Emily nodded, gripping his hand with quiet determination. "More than ever," she replied. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of hope, the acknowledgement of challenges and the promise of renewed closeness. As the day faded into evening, Emily and Daniel sat together, sharing small talk and laughter, a rhythm returning to their lives that had felt absent for far too long. They didn't have all the answers, and there were moments of hesitation, of doubt, but for the first time in months, I think they felt connected. Emily realized that the storm they had weathered wasn't just about distance or misunderstanding. It was about learning to face vulnerability, to communicate without fear, and to trust each other again. And though the path ahead would require patience and courage, the first step had been taken. Standing beside Daniel, holding his hand, Emily felt the weight of uncertainty lift slightly. They had survived the tension, the unspoken emotions, and the unexpected closeness that had tested their marriage. And now, together, they were ready to rebuild. One honest conversation at a time, stronger and more united than before. The morning's fears had transformed into a quiet hope. And for the first time in a long while, Emily believed that love could be rediscovered, nurtured, and made even more resilient than it had ever been.